We should be able to have a little bit more fun driving. And notice with the STI, I was going all the way to redline, whereas with the RS, I don't feel like I have to. It has so much power. Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, we're gonna be doing a driving comparison between a Subaru STI and a Ford Focus RS. This should be a pretty interesting video. But first and foremost, I did do a walk-around comparison, so if you do want to see that video, then just go check that out. I'm gonna include a link in this video so you guys can see the walk-around comparison, and, well, let's get into it. Let's quickly talk about visibility here in the STI before we set off. So first off, visibility over the hood is really good. It's easy to see out of it. The seating position is actually pretty high, so it's pretty easy to see everything. And then there's visibility through both of the mirrors. There's John, say hi to John. And then there's throughout the rest of the rear, and you can see the visibility doesn't really get in the way with the wing and all that. And that all being said, let's set off. So this is gonna be kind of our daily driver portion of the video, where we drive it through this slow speed neighborhood so you guys can kind of see what the STI does from a daily driver perspective, right? Because ultimately both of these cars need to be good at daily driving, because a lot of people, they buy this car because it's something that they can drive in the wintertime, in the summer, they can have fun with it, you know, all that kind of stuff. So the thing I want to mention with the STI is there's definitely a difference in the shifter with this versus the RS, and I totally just missed third gear and went into fifth. I am making myself look like such an idiot in today's video. John's laughing at me, of course. But the shifter is really good. It's really easy to use. The clutch is very light. So from a daily driver perspective, the STI would be really easy to use. And if you do little rev matches, the flat 4 definitely is more blippable than the inline 4 in the Focus RS. They gave the Focus RS unequal length headers to make it a little bit more blippable, but it's still not like the STI. The STI, it's just so easy to rev match downshift, and well, that's our neighborhood part of the video. We are starting off here in the STI. Now I'm going to put it over into the Sport Sharp mode for the driving portion here. And like I said, compared to the RS, definitely more blippable with the throttle. The one thing I will say is the shifter doesn't feel as notchy as the RS, and so definitely sometimes it's harder to get it into gear, if that makes sense. It's not, the shifter itself isn't hard, but it's like the shift points aren't as well defined as in the RS. It's like the RS, you like know you're in a gear, whereas this, it's not necessarily as defined. I will say the intake noise on the STI definitely sounds a whole lot better compared to the intake noise on the RS, and the downshift noise, like all the interior noises you hear, sound significantly better. I definitely love the sound of the flat 4 a lot more compared to the sound of the inline 4. So easy to rev match downshift. It's super smooth. Yeah, it just has this cool, unique sound to it. And the one thing I will mention is the steering definitely feels lighter than the RS. The turn-in feels a little bit more floaty, if that makes sense. Again, we're in the Sport Sharp mode, and it doesn't feel as planted as the RS. The RS feels a little bit more planted, but I'm wondering if that's due in part to the fact that the RS that I have has aftermarket tires that are super sticky. This does have wider tires, but the stickier tires are obviously going to give you a little bit more confidence. But I definitely do feel more body roll here with the STI. And if you guys are wondering, this is definitely me nitpicking the car. Like, for you to find this stuff, you have to just be really, really looking for things. It's a really good driving car. You get a good amount of steering feel, which is definitely nice. I feel like the Focus has a little bit more, but once we're in the Focus, we'll kind of compare a little bit better between them. Let's pop the AC on, Johnny. I'm freaking dying.
It's so cold.
We just lost like 50 horsepower because we turned the, no, I was kidding. That's what happens with the 4 bangers. I know this is the most serious review, guys, but you always gotta have fun sometimes. Like, listen to those downshifts though. That's definitely a high point of the STI, is the sound and the blippability. Like, it makes it more exciting. It makes it more of a driver's car because of how blippable it is. and it definitely feels more progressive. This feels like it has more of a linear power band, whereas the RS is kind of more of an on-off switch. The RS definitely feels more turbocharged than this, which, I mean, for some people that might be a good thing. For other people that might be a bad thing, depending on the type of driving that you prefer to do. And of course, we get stuck behind this slow Honda the whole time, so I'll be back to you guys in a second. We should be able to have a little bit more fun driving. Gosh, it sounds so good, the intake noise. You cannot beat a flat 4-cylinder from a noise perspective. It has such character to it, and there's just not that many cars that have flat 4-cylinders anymore, and so it's definitely fun. Yeah, I am noticing with the steering there's definitely more vagueness than what you get in the Focus RS. The Focus RS, you definitely can feel a little bit more through the steering, and it's so easy to blip. I love it. Yeah, it's so smooth. Like, it just has this nice buttery smoothness to the acceleration. It doesn't feel crazy fast or anything like that, but it feels adequate. It feels like it has more than enough power. Now that we are not behind slow people anymore, we can actually kind of get up and go here. Yeah, just the turn-in on this car is wonderful. The sound is definitely the high point of the STI. The brakes as well. The brakes feel really nice on the STI. It grips really well, but I feel like I'm sliding around in the seats more than compared to the Focus RS. These seats are great, they just don't hold you in place nearly as much. And you guys can see it's so blippable. Like, it just, every single time, it is perfect with the blipping. You get the exact amount of revs that you need. Yeah, definitely love the driving of the STI. It's for sure a driver's car. Now let's quickly go over the high points of the STI before we pop over to the Focus RS, and then we'll obviously drive the RS, and then we'll sum things up for the video. So high points of the STI, the brakes, definitely a high point. They're very progressive. They just feel really nice when you're going into the pedal. And then the linear acceleration is another high point for me, because it definitely makes the car feel more controllable, because you don't just randomly get hit with a massive wave of torque and power. It's just very, very linear and progressive. And then the shifter, I actually like the feel of the shifter. Again, like I said, the only thing I don't like is the fact that the actual notches don't feel super defined compared to the Focus. And then the blippability and the sound, definitely a huge high point with this car. Sounds amazing. Like, I can just listen to this car all day with how good it sounds, and then it's just so easy to blip. And so if you're kind of a newer driver to manual transmissions, this would be a really good car to learn how to blip, because it's just so easy to do. And that's just a characteristic of flat type engines. And so, yeah, overall, I think the STI, great daily driver, obviously, but it's also a car you can have a ton of fun with. And I mean, if you're comparing it to the other cars, I feel like really the only downside to this is going to be a little bit of stuff with the shifter, and then a little bit with the steering and the body roll. But once you get used to that driving part of this car, it's going to feel great to you. The symmetrical all-wheel drive system gets a ton of grip, and it's just a car you're going to be able to have a ton of fun with. Let's talk about visibility here in the RS before we set off. So you definitely sit kind of lower in the car compared to the STI. The STI you have more of like the STI you have more of an upright position, and then over the hood you pretty much don't see the hood whatsoever, whereas the STI you do see the hood. And then visibility through both the mirrors is pretty good, and then visibility throughout the rear, you don't get to see the cool wing like you do in the STI. But anyways, let's set off. So we're doing our daily driver test here in the RS, and we are in the sport mode. I've actually never driven the car in the sport mode before, so this should be kind of fun. Like I said, I've been driving it in the track mode. I definitely like the grip that you get in the track mode compared to the sport mode. We're gonna have to go AC early on this one, John.
That's fine.
So we just lost all of our horsepower already. But obviously, I mean, that's a big part of daily driver, is being able to use the AC in a car. The first thing I want to mention is the shifter is definitely a lot notchier. Like I said, you can definitely feel what gear you're in substantially more in the RS than you can in the STI. This one just it just feels notchier, but the car doesn't feel as linear. It feels definitely more turbocharged, like nothing happens on the bottom end, and then once you kind of get into it a little bit, then stuff starts to happen. And I also feel significantly lower in the car as well compared to the STI. The STI kind of get a little bit better viewpoint because you sit just higher up in the vehicle itself. It's not as blippable either with the rev match downshifting. It's okay, but it's not nearly as good as the STI. The STI is like buttery smooth, whereas this, even if you're a good driver, you're probably gonna miss the RPMs by a little bit. Definitely quick. I'm not sure if I like this sport mode, so I'm in sport mode with the stability control off, and it feels okay, but I feel like I like the track mode a little bit better because of the grip that you get in track mode. So we're doing the fun road here with the RS. Get the cool pops out of the exhaust, which definitely makes the car kind of exciting to drive. The one thing to note, the steering definitely feels heavier than the STI, and it also feels more direct as well, so you feel like you have better control over the car. And then, like I said, the seats hug you a lot more compared to the STI, so that's definitely a big difference with the car. So this one, you feel like you can throw it in a corner a little bit quicker just because you don't slide around. Like here, I feel like I can just go into the corner and the car just not only sticks, but I stick as well in the car. I'm not sliding all over the place or anything like that. But I mean, in terms of from body roll perspective, they're both pretty close. This one just has a little bit less body roll compared to the STI. And then, like I said, with the shifter's that's the huge difference between both these cars. Actually, I feel like it's actually the shifter. The STI shifter just isn't nearly as notchy into all of the gears, and that's a huge thing. And yeah, this just isn't, it's blippable for an inline 4, but it's not as smooth. There's a smoothness to the STI, whereas this one, it just feels a little bit more abrasive when you're going into all of the gears, which, I mean, it's okay. That's not an issue. It's something you can definitely get used to as a driver. I mean, I've gotten used to it, but going from my car to the STI, I'm like, wow, why doesn't my car blip that smooth, right? But yeah, this car, you almost want to change the gears because of the transmission selector, or I should say because of the stick shift, versus in the STI, you want to change the gears because of how blippable it is and because of how smooth it is from gear shift to gear shift. So both of these cars are exciting to drive as manual cars, and you want to shift the gears, but for completely different reasons, which I think that's kind of interesting, and I think that's kind of funny in a sense that that's just how it ended up being. So we're gonna get acceleration here with the RS.
Brake boost.
Yeah, it feels more planted compared to the STI. Not as blippable, but feels more planted in the engine. Feels like it's stressing out just a little bit when you do go quicker with the RS. I had to create a little bit of distance with me and the person in front of me so you guys can get a little bit of spirited driving. And notice with the STI, I was going all the way to red line, whereas with the RS, I don't feel like I have to. It has so much power that you can actually short shift with it, and it's pretty good. I mean, you guys can see at higher RPMs, it does okay, but it feels like it's more comfortable in the 4,000 to 5,500 RPM range. Anything above that in the engine just starts to feel really stressed out, I've noticed, with the RS. And so kind of for your, I guess, spirited driving, it's got so much torque and power that you can just short shift all day, get more than enough torque, get more than enough power, and be able to have fun with it. And you get the pop. I mean, listen to those pops. I could do that all day. But let's actually get into summing things up with this driving comparison, and I guess pick a winner for today's driving comparison with the STI and with the Focus RS. So let's just go over the high points of both the cars and then we'll get into the low points. So in terms of high points for the STI, again, really blippable. The brake feel was great, and the seating position definitely gave you good visibility with the car out of the hood and everything. And it just was very linear and progressive, and so it kind of just gave you this nice smooth driving experience. Coming over to the RS, the shifter feel definitely notchy. You can definitely tell what gear you're getting into. The pops out the back, that's definitely a fun part of it. And then I guess back to the STI, the intake noise is ridiculous. But yeah, the pops are fun in this car. The shifter feel is great. You have a heavier clutch, so you feel like you're doing something substantial. That is a cool car. And then we'll let these people cross here. And then aside from all of that, had to get another pull because it's fun. With the RS, the steering's great, less body roll, feels more like a focused car, whereas the STI feels like it's a daily driver car, but you can also have fun with it. This still feels like a daily driver car, but it feels like it's been a little bit more tuned to the track side of things compared to the STI. And then I guess the bad things about both of the cars. So from a driving perspective, the inline 4 doesn't sound as good as that flat 4, so that's a point off of the RS. And then I guess another point off of the RS is with the clutch feel. Sometimes it's very heavy, and you can definitely feel a lot through it, but I guess some people might not like a heavy clutch. I'm okay with it, but I could see that as being a downside. And then going over the STI, the body roll definitely, and then also with the speed, it doesn't feel as fast as the RS. The RS feels like you don't really have to use all of the power, whereas the STI, you feel like you have to use all the power, go all the way up to redline. So just different driving experiences from that perspective. And so it really just depends on what you prefer. What I'd have to say, I guess, is a final comparison is if you want a car that has crazy intake noise, that's a great daily driver, looks super unique, and if you're not the best manual transmission driver, then I would go for the STI. You can definitely learn on it. And then if you're a good manual transmission driver, you can definitely get a ton out of the car just because of how blippable it is and everything, and it just makes you feel like a pro. Whereas with the RS, if you want something that's more focused, that's faster, that's going to be a little bit harder to drive, but once you learn how to handle the car, you're going to get a little bit more out of it, then that's kind of where the RS stands. And so, I mean, if I was forced to pick a winner, right? If I had someone that said, okay, you've got to pick a winner for today's video, I would pick the STI because I feel like it's a little bit more well-rounded than the RS. Now, I'm not saying the RS is a bad car, and obviously I bought a Focus RS over an STI. I just feel like from all the different things that you take into account with driving, I feel like the STI is just a little bit more well-rounded. But if you're looking for just a pure driver's car, then the Focus RS is going to win. Now that's going to sum things up for our driving comparison between the Subaru STI and between the Ford Focus RS. And I want you guys to let me know which car you would rather be driving around in the comment section below. And I'll see all of you in the next video.